Well, no, just quickly squad stuff. Anything picked up from Monday? Any injuries that are causing concern?
No. We came through that okay, and we've got players coming back into the squad now, which is good. So Alex Scott will be back in contention, and Cal Naismith obviously came back on the bench and he's training. Joe Williams is back outside with us, and he'll hopefully start training with us next week, which will be good for him in particular, because we thought it was going to be well, it was possibly for the whole of the season when he did it, but he's made really good progress. Who else? Well, obviously Mark Sykes will be available after the weekend, so we're making progressions in that sense, which is it's good for the competition.
And specifically with Joe, psychologically, how big a deal is it that if you can get him a little bit of time before the end of the season after what he's gone through?
Yeah, I think that'd be important for him. But actually this time as well, he's a lot more, I think he's got the confidence that the work that he's put in has basically allowed him to be available for the majority of the season. So in his own mind now, he's in a much better place now than he was 12 months ago, and certainly 2 seasons ago. I mean, he's had a pretty difficult time, I suppose, since he's been here, and so I think for him moving forward, I think it's important for him to know that he's a lot more durable now than he was. And
with Cal and Alex being available again, it gives you a whole range of options in terms of being able to either freshen things up or play slightly different ways. I can only imagine that's a good thing, but equally sometimes it can just complicate things.
Yeah, I mean, look, we've got no real intention of changing how we're playing at the moment, because we're playing well, and we've had a run of games where we've struggled to score goals in open play, and all of a sudden now we've looked a lot more creative, and obviously the last 2 games we've scored 2 goals. So I think in that sense the players are feeling that they're coming back into form, which is good. It doesn't matter who you are within a squad, there's a lot depends on confidence, and I think the internal competition within the squad is very healthy, and so we're still a bit unbalanced in terms of where we've got competition, because at the back we're still a little bit short with centre backs, and obviously Cal gives us an option there. Thomas will be training again next week, which will be good for him as well, but and also for us. So we're in a situation at the moment where I think the confidence within the squad is pretty good, and there's a focus which I enjoy observing as a manager, to see that the players have got a focus on performing well.
And that must be really pleasing for you, given the situation that there's not a natural motivation in terms of your position in the table. It's being driven by those individuals within the dressing room.
It's a bit of both, but it's always more meaningful when the players are driving the competition and the focus. I think that's really good. The challenge is to keep it going for the remaining games, and we want to finish as high as we can. So played 2 good sides over the last in the last 2 fixtures, and we're disappointed not to pick up maximum points, really. Although, being realistic, in the first the game against Stoke, as I pointed out on the day, it wasn't a particularly good first half performance, but we managed to win it against Borough. It would have we had a chance to win it still after conceding the equaliser, but performance-wise, it was very good.
But it's funny, across a season, I'd imagine that I can pluck a figure out of the air, but a good proportion of your games are going to be, 5% one side or the other, win or lose. Is that, as players, you just go out and play your best. As a manager, how do you get that little 2-3% that gets you the right side of that more often than the wrong side?
I think really more than anything is by having a squad of players where everybody's pulling totally in the same direction. So we've made great strides this season in being able to shape the squad, not necessarily with the balance of positionally, but with the mentality of the players. I think we've made progress in that regard. Recruitment this summer is going to be important for us, obviously, to try and find those added ingredients that put us in a position where we can challenge at the top of the league. So, when you consider that it's 9 points between us and the playoffs, and you cast your mind back over the season with either lost opportunities or however you want to reflect on it, the margins are remarkably small. And more than anything, it's about trying to build a group ethic which underpins everything. That's the essence to success at whatever level you're at, and you can go a long way on just a feeling or a togetherness, and you can go quite a long way with just having good players. But the sides that are successful have a good mixture of both, and some teams, the top end teams in world football, have the best players and a fantastic atmosphere around the place too. So, it's not really, it's not a great secret, is it? It's not something that is but it's quite elusive, and it's quite difficult to shape that. You've got to allow, to a certain extent, things to evolve and have a lighter touch on it, not be too heavy-handed. And I think, so you look at sides like Luton, who have had another excellent season. Millwall have done really well, and they have strengths as footballing sides, but they have also very visible togetherness, for want of a better term, and and we are developing that very nicely.
Watford this weekend, I suppose they're one of those teams that you look on the team sheet, they've got a lot of talent there, but as you yourself know, they're not averse to making the changes, and that makes that consistency a little bit more elusive.
Yeah, I would, having worked there, I know what it's like to manage the club. It's a really good club in lots of ways, but I think if you try and look at it from a player's perspective, where it's everybody knows it's more likely that players will last longer than the manager. I don't know the actual impact of that, but my feeling about it is it doesn't lend itself to building success. It's sort of it lends itself to change, and change can sometimes be good, and change can sometimes have a detrimental effect. So I don't think it's any secret that they've had some successes and some disappointments, and if you look at it with a rational sort of mindset, I think it's pretty easy to see why they a little bit up and down and have been for a while. But the counter argument would be that they've been in the Premier League and come back down and gone back up, and so it depends on how you look at it. But it's I think it could do with a a spell of, I think the club could do with a spell of continuity of message. I think because it must be quite difficult for players to deal with not the threat of constant change, but having to deal with different perspectives on a regular basis, I think.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Because they're quite a unique case and quite a big contrast to here, especially how you've worked here. I mean, you've mentioned it before, you kind of knew what you were getting into to a certain extent, but did you think you could change that culture at all in any way?
I did, and we did. We needed snookers when I went in there before Christmas, and we had a really the players responded very well. The staff obviously I took Craig Shakespeare came in with me, which was a real help for me on a personal level, but the staff that I inherited were fabulous, and I still keep in contact with many of them now, but English, Spanish, Italian members of staff, they made some really good friendships there, and so I'm not being judgmental, or rather I am being a bit judgmental. I'm not being overly critical, because I took the job on knowing what I was going into there, so I didn't go in trying to change things that I couldn't change, and so I think that's something that comes a little bit with experience, where you when you take a job on, and so for instance you compared it a little bit to this, or try to give some sort of comparison. This is a totally different type of challenge, but that's not to say that neither of them, or either, they come with their own problems, if you want to call them problems, but they're challenges, and change here has proved to be quite difficult, whereas change there is normal. So it's how you want to look at it. I don't ever sort of look at it through just my own eyes in terms of saying, what do I want? I'm not wired like that. It doesn't work like that. So it's just really interesting to know that there are different clubs, different ways of doing things, and there's no absolutely right or wrong way. It's just that you've got to accept that there are going to be, on a personal level, challenges in any job which don't really fit with what's best for you. That's life. It's the same in your job.
Just going back to something you said about recruitment this summer, and you talked about added ingredients.
Yeah.
Could you be a bit more specific about what you think's perhaps missing or needs enhancing?
Well, we know the areas of the pitch that we need to strengthen. I mean, I think we're very blessed in forward positions now. We have different types of players, and they all bring something that's, that the good thing is a lot of them bring goals too. So we've got, I've said over a long period of time we need to share it amongst the team better, and we're still, the area of the pitch that we're very short of goals still is midfield. That's been something which is very evident for quite a while. But I'm not suggesting that's the priority this summer. It's not, because we've got, we'll still be in the market for what's out there to strengthen in every position. But the priorities still are to strengthen where we've been at our weakest this season, and that's still been at the back, centre half position in particular. We'll need to address that in terms of more depth, to allow people like Pringy, who's when he stepped in at centre back, he's done pretty well. George Tanner has too, and Zach's had a remarkable season really. When you consider the position he was in last pre-season, so we're very thankful that is the case. And then we've had, Cal playing at centre back. Thomas has not really been available often enough, which is a shame. And Rob's got his difficulties at the minute, so it's pretty clear where we've got to strengthen. In all honesty, but yeah, it's on top of getting the positional recruitment right, it's having the right people come in as well. So they've got to be hungry for success and to make a difference. And that's been top of the agenda, really, for me. It's always going to be one of the main ingredients of signing players. It's not just what they are as players; it's who they are.
And is that you meeting them to assess that?
Yeah. That's always the final filter, if you want. Yeah.
And how quickly do you establish that?
Well, I suppose like most of us, first impressions are always very important, aren't they?
Just on Alex,
Which is why I'm so awkward with you.
I know Tommy was out for quite a bit longer, Cal was out for quite a bit longer. Was there any kind of sort of minutes restriction you're thinking with Alex coming back in?
Not with the type of injury. I think with soft tissue injuries, if it's like a hamstring or a calf, where there are more factors like the softness of the pitch is a real big factor. Obviously the profile of the player, the big players, light, fast, explosive players with hamstrings, you've got to be very, very careful. So I think it's more to do with the individual sides of it, but I think Alex, when he comes back in, we can't take liberties with him. So I think it would be, we'd be looking at 60 minutes like we would do with most players who've been out for a sustained period, but he's not been out for that long. And it's more to do with when players are out for a more sustained period of time, when they're out for months, then you've got to be a little bit more careful because game conditions you cannot control them. And there's the emotion involved in it too. So we'll see. We'll be. I'm always governed by what the medical department say. I don't try and guess myself. I'm certainly no expert, but it does come into the reckoning in terms of how we balance the team.
A contract question.
Yeah.
Which will be probably a theme between now and the end of the
season.
Yeah,
probably.
But, I know you've been asked about Zach and Jay.
Yeah.
Where are you at with Andy King?
Andy?
Yeah.
Well, he's a member of staff, isn't he?
Mm-hmm.
So hopefully he'll still be a member of staff here next year if he plays.
Do you see a player-coach role again?
Yeah. Because well, two things. He's got value as a player. And I think this season's been beneficial for his, if you like, profile with our fan base to see that actually he still has something to offer. But on top of that, he's been and continues to be and has been a big part, as a lot of our senior players are too, the development of our younger players. That's something that's been discussed already. There's no secrets internally about that, and hopefully we can if both parties are happy, then hopefully he'll be here doing a similar thing to what he has done this year, and that is be a valuable squad member, but also have an important role to play with the development of the players.
On going back to something you said with Ed, when you want to finish as high as you can, where do you think you can finish on the table?
Well, just looking at the table at the minute, I mean, if we get a top 10 finish, that will have been a really a decent outcome. But you know, I mean, when we've got close to bridging that gap between where we've been mid-table and the next group above, you know, we've unfortunately either had a bad result ourselves and they've had a good result. So it's sort of it keeps stretching it, but I tend not to spend too much time looking at above. I'm more concerned with investing as much time as possible, just keeping our players focused on our own fixtures. And that's really, again, that's how I work at all times of the season anyway. So we'll see, but we've got some tough fixtures coming up. We've had some tough fixtures, but I just think it's important that we strive to be as good as we can be. If sides who are better than us beat us, then that's life.
Thanks, Nigel.
Yeah, okay, cheers.
Hi, Nigel. Jamie Knight-LaBelle has been nominated for the Apprentice of the Season award for his achievements on and off the pitch.
Yeah.
He's captained the under-21s at just 18, trained with the first team a few times. How impressed of his coaches and you when you've seen him been with him?
How impressed am I?
With you being when you.
Well, look, our young players here get an opportunity to be as good as they can be, just because the system that they're in is one which is very much about the players' development. So, you know, for me, it's another good example of we're trying to get things right here. We don't always get things right all the time. Of course we don't. But at least we are. We're a club which works hard to try and get the best players that we can in the building, and then we work very, very hard to develop them and allow them to be as good as they can be. That's the key to it. I'm not massive on just pouring praise on people. It's more about what we're doing collectively, and it's always very rewarding for the staff, both the academy staff and the first team staff, to see players doing well. But of course, as an apprentice, an Apprentice of the Year award, I've never heard of it before, so it's not something I'm aware of. When players break into the first team, for instance, they're at the start of they probably reach the end of their academy journey in some ways, but it's all starting again. And so it's great to recognise successes, of course, and we as a football club are very happy that our academy is a successful academy, because it means that it certainly made our life in the first team environment a lot more, I was going to say easier, not easier, but we've got players coming through the system. So it's allowed us as a club to weather a difficult period, which in itself is a very good thing. But let's keep things in perspective. It's fabulous for him to be recognised, but he's also very aware that the real challenge starts as well.
Yeah. And you mentioned how blessed you are in attacking positions. Obviously, you've got Naki and Harry, more experience, and Tommy and Sam have both come through the academy route. Seb Palmer Holden scored a hat-trick for the under-21s on Tuesday. Him seeing Sam Bowles and Tommy Conway's progression to the first team, that can only act as extra motivation for him and the other academy players.
Well, he travelled with us in pre-season. He was on our pre-season trip, so he had a taste of the first team environment last summer, and I think I've said many occasions that everybody's route's a bit different. I think when you look at how he plays in particular, it's probably a lot of people might think he's a bit older than he is, and so we have to we have to remember that he's still a really young man himself, and you know, he'll get some exposure back with the first team at some point too, which will be, I think, beneficial to him, for him. He may be a player that we decide to loan. We don't know. We've not made those decisions yet, but you know, all those types of decisions will be based on whether there is a realistic route for them in our first team, and so those types of things will be discussed, as they are always discussed on a regular basis anyway. But certainly once we get back into the pre-season mode, the first spell of pre-season is looking at where they are, and quite often you get young players coming back, and visibly they've changed. You know, they have a close season, and pre-season is actually one of the few opportunities that players get for physical adaptation. So, and quite often you see that with youngsters. So we've seen it in so many of them. So yeah, next season will be a big one, I'm sure, for him and many other young players that probably aren't even on the radar yet, just because they will put themselves forward by showing what they're about.
Yeah. And just on Watford, was mentioned earlier about their attacking talent. Obviously, one of those, Ismail Sarr, I know you know well.
Yes.
Worked with him. How big of a threat will he pose with his kind of raw pace and athleticism?
Well, when I worked at Watford, I just felt that he was I'm in some ways I'm surprised he's still there. I thought he would be snapped up by somebody. I know he's had some issues with injuries. But he's a very exciting player, and he'll be a real threat because of his pace and his ability. Yeah, Gio Pedro was signed when I was there. Can't remember what he was then. He may only have been 18 then when the club signed him. He's really developed, hasn't he? So they've got some really good players. Yeah, there's no doubt about that. But as I've spoken to with the players today, what we've always got to be is collectively as good as we can be. And in that framework, then players have got their jobs to do individually. But our best chance of success, not just in the short term but longer term too, is to have a very strong team ethic, because we can't compete with sides that come down from the Premier League, and so we have to have a different way of achieving success, and so ours is to develop a team identity, and hopefully we do already have some very good individuals within that. But that's the essence to how we will achieve our success.
Yeah, and Chris Wilder, obviously, just a few weeks into the job there, you must have had plenty of battles with him over the years in the Steel City derbies.
Yeah, we played at similar ages, I think. He used to live around the corner from me, so I don't know where he lives now, but I like Chris, and he's had some success, quite a bit of success too. So I'm pleased he's back in work. He'll know what he's let himself in for. Of course he will. But it's good to see managers who are prepared to take on difficult jobs for the short term. It's something which, again, it tests your own skills and your ability to concentrate on what you can affect rather than everything else.